This is the Mint on ZTN Prime, your sneak peek into the world of business, finance and economies. I'm Eben Mabunda. Let's get started. Now, coming up, trade between Zimbabwe and the European Union has grown by 30%, with FDI surging by a staggering 90% in just 3 years, now surpassing $880 million. This highlights the pace of transformation since Brussels relaxed its stance on Harare and introduced friendlier trade policies. The EU has $500 million in development projects run by Team Europe and also various humanitarian aid programs currently at play. The EU remains a critical buyer of Zimbabwe's horticultural exports, which include berries, citrus fruits, and macadamia nuts, with over 40% of Zimbabwe's horticultural produce absorbed by EU markets, positioning the bloc as Zimbabwe's single largest buyer in this category. We speak to the EU ambassador here on the Mint. Now, the Mint will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Mint. We're broadcasting to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. I'm Eben Mabunda. Now, trade between Zimbabwe and the EU has grown by 30% over the past 3 years, as well as FDI surging by 90% over that particular period. And now this surpasses over $880 million in aggregate. This highlights the pace of transformation since Brussels relaxed its stance on Harare and introduced friendlier trade policies. I'm joined in the studio by the EU ambassador to Zimbabwe, His Excellency Jobst von Kirchmann. Ambassador, hello and welcome to the Mint.
Good afternoon, Eben. Pleasure for me to be here.
Fantastic. Now, to get the ball rolling, may you speak to us about the state of affairs between Zimbabwe and the EU from a trade perspective?
Yeah, I think it is a very positive trajectory. You just said it already. The trade has increased by 30%. If I compare that to the overall increase of trade, which is around 20%, I think that's much better. But even more of the, if you look at the foreign direct investment coming from the EU, it has increased by 90%, compared again to around 20% increase overall. So it means something went well, and I think the path we have both chosen, Zimbabwe and the European Union, is a good one, because it has resulted over the last 3 years in an increase of investment, in an increase of trade, and I think that reflects, mutual understanding, discussions, also support programs we have set up, and I think that's how it should be when two countries work together.
Right. And of course, this conversation is coming through just before the very first EU-Zim business forum. May you shed more light on that very initiative and what's lined up?
So the first ever EU-Zimbabwe Business Forum is taking place starting next Tuesday on the 20th of May in the Makels Hyatt Hotel for 2 days. And it's an adventure for us. I'm not hiding you, because we have never done it before. And we were thinking, is that the right moment of doing it? And it basically, you just saw the path we are going down. And we felt, well, there's appetite for more investment, there's appetite for more trade. So probably that's the right moment of doing it. But then also we felt it's very important that European companies are meeting Zimbabwean companies. Right. Because coming here, not knowing the cultural context, not knowing how it works, and have a greenfield investment is probably not easy. So we have invited Zimbabwean and European companies. And again, 6 months back, we had no idea, would that fly or not? Would we have 5 companies? Or so at the moment, even I was thinking maybe we link it to ZITF, because we were not sure.
Right.
Now I kind of proudly say today, and we are still a couple of days before the event, we have over 600 companies wanting to register, and we cannot accept them because we have hardly 250 places. So we had to look into who is the most suited for what we would like to do in that business forum. And that is actually bringing companies together in 3 value chains: horticulture, agriculture, and agro-processing, renewable energy, in particular off-grid solutions, and then the mining value chain. Not necessarily primary mining, but mining supplies and mining services. And why these 3? Because over the last months, we actually analyzed together with CEDA, CZI, and Simtrade what are the best value chains for Zimbabwean companies and for European companies. And we matched them. And that's the outcome. And so I think if I look at the number of people wanting to participate, it seems to be the right choice.
Right. Renewable energy obviously is at the fore of what this conference will be looking into, as well as, of course, the existing horticultural pillar, where the EU has been a dominant buyer of Zimbabwe's exports in that particular regard. May you speak to the prospects for growth within these areas and beyond?
As I say, I think these for us are the 3 value chains. Mining, you haven't included it, but for us it's the 3 where we see the biggest potential. The biggest potential for trade, but also for investment. And if I look at the companies coming now and the companies registering locally, I think locally there's a lot of appetite to work together with European companies, either for the know-how, for machinery, for technology transfer or capital. And from the European side, I think it's still a relatively untapped market. Yes, we have increased by 90%, but we could have done more, yeah? And I think this kind of event serves as well to showcase to European companies what Zimbabwe has to offer. Because many companies have gone in other African countries and did not necessarily come to Zimbabwe. And I think the fact is that this is organized here in Harare. Companies can come, they can experience the atmosphere, the flair of Zimbabwe and Harare. I think is very, very important.
Right. Zimbabwe, of course, has a good 40% of its horticultural products absorbed by the European market. What prospects for growth exist within that horticultural segment?
We have seen, in particular, the blueberry value chain, I think, is
it's moving
rocket-like moving up, and we have others, macadamia nuts, tea, coffee, cut flowers, we have citrus, and so on. So I think that's all on the rise. That's also a reason why we chose them. Now, there is a lot of appetite from the European Union to import from Zimbabwe. We have a trade deficit with Zimbabwe. We don't mind. Zimbabwe companies are actually allowed to export duty and tariff-free any product. European companies are a bit more limited. 87% of the tariff lines have been liberated. 13 are still not liberated. But we don't mind that because there's an appetite for horticulture products. Now, having said that, if I look at the number of companies who registered, we have 200 companies, Zimbabwean companies, who registered under the trade agreement. That's actually relatively low. And when I go around and I talk to companies, often they do not know that the possibility of tariff and duty-free export exists. They do not know how exactly to do it. So the Business Forum serves as well to re-explain what does it mean, trade.
Right.
And we have a lot of programs as well which support trade facilitation. It could be for companies, but it could be also for people working at the border authorities to exactly know what is duty-free, what is not duty-free, what is tariff-free, and so on. So I think there's a lot of potential to do more.
Right. Let's talk about the development projects that are currently taking place in Zimbabwe. In 2024, the EU signed $80 million in financing agreements with Zimbabwe covering agriculture, biodiversity, governance, and gender. And $600 million is the value of the ongoing developmental projects that are taking place in Zimbabwe at this particular moment. So the question then would be, how are these funds being directed toward development in Zimbabwe? And what are some of the key areas of interest to the EU?
So I think, first of all, this portfolio of 600 million, that's Team Europe. That's the European Union plus the EU member states plus our bank, the European Investment Bank, which, by the way, is the biggest bank in the world. Not everybody knows that. And it's geared towards basically supporting what is in the National Development Strategy. You see, all the development programs are not standalone programs. You're not going somewhere and saying, I think we should do this in that project.
Right.
You actually are aligned with what the government or the country at that time has proposed as their own strategy. You can pick and choose. And what we have chosen are all areas which in the long run will support the business development, a sustainable and an inclusive business development. Mm-hmm. It could be on women, bring women into the economic life, help them to have startups. It could be farmers. We did a lot last year on during the drought with drought-resistant crops. We continue to do that. It could be in more remote areas on supporting livelihoods for resilience purposes and so on. But it's all around that area. Improving trade, improving business, make it inclusive, make it sustainable, preserve the environment. Don't do business which destroys environment. Don't do business which excludes parts of the society.
Right.
And I think that is absolutely in line with what you find in the Vision 2030 or what you will find in the National Development Strategy 1. And hopefully very soon in the National Development Strategy 2.
Of course, expected to be rolled out for period 2026 to 2030. We will delve further into, of course, what the Green Revolution means and how important that is. Now, the EU is a major supplier of machinery and chemicals that are used in Zimbabwe's be it agriculture, transport and manufacturing sectors. Question then would be, what measures can be taken to somewhat facilitate the import of high quality, productivity enhancing EU goods into Zimbabwe?
So I digged personally into that because I was very interested. How do people actually sometimes buy an Italian machine and then a German one, and why chemicals from here? So there are two things. I think the first one is, again, knowledge. I think you must know that you have a possibility to buy duty and tariff free, and what are the requirements for that? Knowledge. The second one are contacts. You must know somebody. You are not going on the internet and buying a machine for several million dollars. Yeah, you want to know what company is that. You need to meet people. And I think this contact and this what I would call dating, is very important, and that's why we put it.
It's a kind of dating.
It's a kind of dating. That's why we put it as well in the heart of the EU-Zimbabwe Business Forum. Dating, B2B. People have to meet. They can arrange meetings. By the way, we have already over 60 meetings arranged between European companies and Zimbabwean companies, even before it even started. We have speed dating, where people can just say, I would like to meet you. I think you are an interesting partner for me. I provide machinery. You are in the berry sector. Can we sit together? And we have this facility as well. But it's about knowing, understanding, trusting the other. I think that is very, very important.
Right, time for us to take a breather. When we come back, we explore other areas of collaboration and trade between Zimbabwe and the European Union. The meant to be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Didn't graduate? I guess I blew it.
You couldn't advise him anything. He would just look at you and say, so who do you think you are?
We were just like really spoiled.
And then they just give me the receipt and I'd pay.
That guy walks in one day and then he says that he wants to make a movie.
He was blowing the money.
There was just like this habit that he had where as soon as he got money, it was gone.
I just didn't have the skills or the experience.
This money, I could see it disappear so fast.
In a land where traditions run deep, where the soil holds the secrets of generations, and where dreams are sown alongside seeds, a new generation emerges. Welcome to Young Seeds. Get ready to embark on a journey like no other as we shine a spotlight on the dynamic and inspiring young farmers in the heartland of Zimbabwe.
I want to do it because plants will die, plants will get infected by diseases.
I tried to do mixed farming, that is also putting tomatoes. I have half a hectare of tomatoes.
Every 40 days it has to be giving birth.
Produce a good quality fruit size. Calves are kept in different pens, basically so that they don't spread diseases to each other.
My name is Tarios Pauke. I'm a rabbit farmer.
These young farmers are revolutionizing traditional practices, embracing technology, and finding sustainable solutions that will shape the future of agriculture. So, let's get our hands dirty.
Welcome back to The Mint. We're broadcasting to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. I'm Eben Mabunda. We are in conversation with the EU ambassador to Zimbabwe, His Excellency Jobst von Kirchmann. And of course, we are discussing all matters trade between the EU as well as Zimbabwe. Now, Ambassador, picking up from where we left off, Zimbabwe remains in arrears to the Paris Club and multilateral lenders, including the European Investment Bank. Question then would be, how important is the ongoing debt resolution dialogue for re-engaging EU lenders and restoring long-term financial support?
I think it's very, very important. I think Zimbabwe has 21.7 billion in arrears. You mentioned the Paris Club members, but there are also non-Paris Club members.
Right.
There are other banks than the European Investment Bank. And obviously, it affects, if I make it simple, it affects the credit rating.
Right.
So nobody is currently lending to Zimbabwe. So I have often commended, and I will do it today, that His Excellency, the President Mnangagwa, put underway this process. I think it's a very important process. And it's based on 3 tracks. An economic track with economic reforms, where the government is going towards signing a program with the IMF, a land program where we have also seen a new land reform which allows people to buy the land, etc. I think also very positive, and several undertakings and reforms in the good governance sector. It is very important because on one hand, if that is successful, it will open the door for sovereign lending for Zimbabwe. What does it mean? It means the country can take up billions in order to infrastructure, for example, what is in the National Development Strategy or in the 2030 vision. I think it's important, and that's why we are supporting this project and this program. We do everything that Zimbabwe succeeds. So we are currently looking into how can we, over milestones, move forward and support Zimbabwe and support what the president put underway, so that in the foreseeable future, Zimbabwe will be able to access it, access sovereign lending. Then there's another element as well. Obviously, this whole discussion is also bringing Zimbabwe back in a very nice way in the international community. I will go after the business forum next week to Côte d'Ivoire, to Abidjan, where there is a meeting on arrears clearance on Zimbabwe. You see, it has an international dimension, and it also shows to the world what Zimbabwe is currently undertaking in order to drive the economy and other areas forward.
Right. Now, Zimbabwe is currently negotiating a deepening of the trade agreement with the EU together with 4 other countries. 15 rounds of negotiations have been included. What can this bring for Zimbabwe, and when will it be finalized?
I hope it will start at the end. I hope it will be finalized very soon. We have 15 rounds of negotiation.
Right.
Now we will have the 16th round. It can actually bring a lot, because when you have an agreement like we have now, which allows tariff and duty-free export, there's still a lot of rules attached to that. So a deepening actually fixes these rules and allows a much easier export, a much easier import. It extends the agreement from goods to services to investments. It allows, actually, it will facilitate enormously European investment coming in the country, in particular in areas like horticulture or renewables. And so it's a multitude of mechanisms which give a better predictability. It actually creates a framework in which European companies could invest. It creates a framework for Zimbabwean companies where it's much easier to export. And as well, it's underpinned by a financial support. Financial support to facilitate trade, to facilitate investment. So I think it's a very important agreement. Zimbabwe is not alone. It's doing that in a group which we call the ESA 5. There are 4 other countries as well. But they are one of the front runners. And I personally hope we will be able to conclude very, very soon. We are waiting for the offer from Zimbabwe in that context. And I hope after the business forum, I will be able to say we have just received it and we can go in the final round of negotiation.
Right, hopefully. And of course, we look forward to those particular conclusions. Now, how is the EU's global gateway strategy being applied in Zimbabwe to somewhat promote sustainable infrastructure development?
Now, the Global Gateway initiative is our flagship. It's the biggest we are having, 300 billion euros, 115 alone for Africa, on a multitude of areas. But as you rightly said, sustainability, connectivity are the key words. Could be roads, could be railways, could be could be digital connectivity, but also sustainable development, education and health, for example. Now in Zimbabwe, because of the arrears situation currently, we have a limited application of Global Gateway. That's why I'm also so much involved, by the way, in the arrears clearance, because I would like to open that door as well fully. Having said that, we did, to give you a couple of examples, the rehabilitation of the Kariba Dam. I think it's a 113 million euro project. It's quite a big one. The EU is the biggest donor in that project, and we have just finalized it. But we are also looking into a corridor from South Africa to Zambia, going through Zimbabwe. We are currently doing a study for railway connectivity. So I think that's another one. But then one thing which is key to understand is the driving force for Global Gateway is the private sector. The European private sector, but also the local private sector. So what we are doing, for example, with the Business Forum, bringing European private sector together with the Zimbabwe one, is exactly what we want to do on the Global Gateway. But then also supporting the local private sector, which we do massively. If I look only back the last 6 months, I have signed for 60 million on lending programs with local banks, NMB and Stanbic. I think that shows as well what we are doing locally for companies, because making capital available on a longer tenure with a lower interest rate, I think it's a great advantage. So that's the way we roll it out in Zimbabwe. Still, I would call it on a lower fire right now, but I hope when the arrears clearance process really fully kicks in, then we will have the full potential of Global Gateway in Zimbabwe.
Right. You are working closely with ZIDA, Zim Trade, CZI, Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries. What reforms do you believe are most urgent to boost investor confidence and attract more European capital into Zimbabwe?
First of all, I think we have a fantastic cooperation with the 3 of them. ZIDA, I think, acts as a real one-stop shop. And I think that's a very good thing for investment, by the way, because if you're an investor and you don't know Zimbabwe, you don't want to go to 5 different places.
Correct.
Ideally, you have one contact person. You want to go there. I think ZIDA is about to live up to that idea. You have a one-stop shop. You go somewhere. And that will help enormously investment. Obviously, CZI and Simra were our partners as well to understand what are the most promising value chains. Where could we do more? Without their help, it would be impossible to have something like a business forum and focus on 3 value chains. So I think investment is not just blind investment, say please invest in Zimbabwe, is understanding where are opportunities, number 1. Number 2, very, very importantly, is trust. Trust and predictability. And trust means not necessarily that everything is perfect, But when I come as a company, I would like to know what I'm getting myself into. I would like to understand what is that market. Not the perfection, but what are the risks? What are the shortcomings? That creates trust. What we want to do with the business forum is exactly that. It's not just say, there are thousands of opportunities, come and invest, but tell them there are opportunities, there are also risks. That's why it's feasible. You can do it. And that creates, in an entrepreneur, in my view, the necessary level of trust to say, okay, I see it, opportunities, I have a good margin, I put my money.
Right. Obviously, viable options for investment there. Very briefly, Africa is running with the African Continental Free Trade Area. What lessons could this developing bloc learn from the EU?
I think first of all, it's a fantastic undertaking. You think 54 countries, fantastic. I think Africa has to find its own way. These are all sovereign countries, they have to find their own way. They can be rather inspired than learning. I would not use the word learn, but being inspired. Look at what are the Americans doing, what are the Europeans doing, what are the Chinese doing. Be inspired by it. Then, of course, it has taken us quite a while to get a single market going with 27 member states. Now you're 54. So it's not an easy undertaking neither. Yeah? And I think anybody who is working on that will probably also look into differences between countries economically and how to factor them in. But I think globally it's just good to look around and not necessarily be positively inspired, also be inspired from negative experiences from others.
Right.
Yeah, and saying, oh my God, I do not want to repeat what they did. I would like to do better.
All right. As we round up, what is your outlook and your vision where the relationship between the EU and Zimbabwe is concerned?
So I think we have currently a solid relationship. We have a trade agreement. You have seen 30% more trade, 90% more foreign direct investment. I would like us to stay on that path, move forward, and in the next couple of years to hit the 1 billion mark for trade and the 1 billion mark for foreign direct investment.
Right, so thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
On the Mint.
Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Well, of course, that was His Excellency Jobst von Kirchmann, the Ambassador of the European Union, joining us here on the Mint, of course, the EU Ambassador to Zimbabwe. Thank you very much for watching. Do follow us on our social media handles, as Zim Papers TV Network, as well as at ZTN Prime. Your views and your thoughts are important to us. Remember to catch us every weekday at 2 p.m. Central African Time for the juiciest business stories in Zimbabwe, on the continent, as well as beyond. I'm Eben Mabunda, the money man. Let them do what they do. When we do what we do, we mean business. Thank you for watching and have a good day.